All right. Hey, guys. Welcome back to another episode of the Athlete Podcast. I'm super excited. Hope you all are doing well. I have an awesome guest on the show today. With me in the studio is Damon West. Damon, how are you doing today? How are things going?
Alex, I'm great, man. You know, that's a question people ask today, and you kind of throw it out there, and you're like, I don't know what I'm going to get, man, because it's, coronavirus, COVID-19, and, you ask someone how they're doing, it may unload on you, and that's okay. It's okay if someone does unload on you, but my answer to that question is I'm doing great because, it's your time is what you make of it. And when I was serving time in prison, we'll get into all that, the first rule about doing time is you have to do your time, not let your time do you. So you got to pick what you put in your day, and it's up to you what kind of day you're going to have, Alex. So my day is great, brother. How's yours?
I love that. I'm doing great as well, and thanks for that perspective. And one thing just to kick this off that I really respected about you, one, I just finished your book, and it was amazing, The Change Agent, and I'm going to have a link to that in all the show notes for everybody. But one of the things that I really respect about you is when we kind of started the dialogue about doing this interview, you said, hey, Alex, I want you to go read my book first because I want you to be able to ask questions that we can then give great content to your listeners. And so first off, for all the listeners, I think this is going to be a great few minutes here together. But thank you for encouraging me to do that because, one, the book was awesome. You narrated the whole thing.
Oh, man, thanks, dude.
Yeah, it was awesome. And I just learned so much from your story. And I think it helped me, too, just think of great questions to ask you today. So, everyone that's listening, you got to go check out that book. I'll have the link to it in the show notes. But so I know your story now, and I've obviously been following you for a while. We've been linked up for a while here. But for the people that don't know your story, the story of Damon West, I know there's a lot to your story, probably not enough time here on the show. But if you could just summarize maybe up until the point when, like you just said, you got arrested and incarcerated, what did your life look like up until that point?
Man, Alex, people ask me this all the time, and I think the simplest answer to that is that I had every opportunity, all the love and support to be anything I wanted to be in this life. I could have done anything. I didn't come from a broken home. My mom and dad, this year they've been married for 52 years. They're still alive, and came from a great little town in Port Arthur, Texas. Great athlete, a superstar athlete growing up. I was really, God blessed me with a lightning bolt for a right arm. I was a starting quarterback for 3 years in my high school team. Got a football scholarship to play ball at the University of North Texas. But, in my youth growing up, I had some difficulties with some issues. I mean, I'm ADHD. Of course, I didn't know anything about being ADHD back then. But another thing is that I was molested by a babysitter when I was 9, and I'm in recovery now. I'm an addict in long-term recovery. And so I got into substance abuse right after that event. And I know now looking back in addiction, that's what's called an activating event. That's where something happens in your life and you start putting in chemicals to change the way you feel, right? So at 9, I'm molested. At 10, I started getting into my dad's beer in the fridge. I like the way it feels to get drunk, to be out of my normal self. Smoking cigarettes, a lot of adult behaviors, smoking pot when I'm 12. But I tell people all the time, the worst part about this is I've got a bad belief system brewing in there. I've got a bad belief system, and a bad belief system tells us to do something the wrong way over and over again. And the longer we hold on to a bad belief system, the harder it is to get rid of, right? Because your mind becomes programmed to do something habitual, but it's a bad habit. And the bad thing about bad belief systems is they're very hard to break. And a bad belief system usually wins out in the end. It's very hard to change your personal character when your character is developed in the wrong direction. So I had a lot of character issues, but, like I said, I could throw football really well. And this is Texas. High school football is a big deal down here. So I got a scholarship to play ball at North Texas. Got hurt in 1996, man. I was 20 years old, redshirt sophomore year. The starting quarterback for my Division I team. You played Division I college football. You played quarterback. And you and I have talked about this. And the personality of someone that plays quarterback, we're very type A. And I've rarely ever met a quarterback that was anything but type A.
Right.
It's just the level of type A that you are, right?
Right.
But it's very type A, very wanting to get in there and take control of things and run things. And they're leaders. Quarterbacks are leaders. And I've always been told all my life by elementary school teachers, junior high teachers, Damon, you're a leader. And you're going to lead either the right direction or the wrong direction, but you're going to lead somewhere. So September 21st, 1996, we take the field against Texas A&M. This is Texas A&M, man. What boy growing up in Texas doesn't either want to play for those guys or against those guys, man? And there I am, Third play of the game, I go down. It separated my shoulder, and I never played college football again. It was, my career was over. And I always tell people I came into what I call a fork in the road in life. And these fork in the roads in life are days that man, life is going to knock you down so hard, Alex. And when it does, and you get up and dust yourself off, you've got a choice to make at this fork in the road. But what you've also got standing in front of you when you get hit with a fork in the road day, a day kind of like what's going on right now with COVID-19, right? This is a giant fork in the road. The whole world is at this fork in the road. But we have in front of us what's called the existential vacuum. And I got this term from a guy I read his book in prison, a guy named Viktor Frankl. And if you've never read Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, it's a must read. And Viktor Frankl talks about the existential vacuum. The existential vacuum is this giant hole, this void, where our existence and all of our meaning is wrapped up in. Well, at 20 years old, my entire existence, all my meaning is wrapped up in being a college football player. I didn't have a plan B. I didn't have a plan C. So when I got up to that giant fork in the road in life, football was gone, that bad belief system kicked in. And that bad belief system, I was doing is drinking a little beer, smoking a little pot. Well, now I'm putting in the hardcore drugs to change the way I feel because I don't like feeling like Damon West, the guy that's not the quarterback anymore, not the jock, not the athlete, right? Cocaine, ecstasy, pills, and you name it. I partied hard, graduated from college somehow in 1999, move off to work in Washington. I worked in Congress. I worked for a congressman from Houston, worked there in the U.S. Congress for a couple of years. Then I worked for a guy running for president of the United States in 2004, a guy from Missouri, a guy named Dick Gephardt.
Okay.
Dick Gephardt was a congressman from Missouri, and I worked on his presidential campaign in 2004. And when Dick dropped out of the race, I moved back to Dallas, Texas, to train to be a stockbroker for one of the biggest Wall Street banks in the world, UBS, United Bank of Switzerland. And it was at that job as a broker that I was introduced to meth for the first time. And meth was a game changer, Alex. I mean, meth was unlike any other drug. I tell people all the time that the most important part of my presentation for young people is probably the 30 seconds where I talk about how meth grabbed a hold of me, because that's what it does. And it doesn't let go. I smoked it one time, instantly hooked, and gave everything away. My job, my home, my car, my sanity, my savings account, my family. And I went from working on Wall Street to living on the streets of Dallas, man. I'm living on the street. I'm sleeping in abandoned buildings. I'm sleeping in cars. I'm living in dope houses with other meth addicts. And all we do is sit around and get high all day long. This guy with all this promise in life, once had this great life, is now sitting around these meth dens getting high. And we start committing property crimes to fund our addiction because we don't have any jobs and we're unemployable. So we start breaking into cars, we start breaking into storage units, and eventually we escalate to home burglaries. And these burglaries, man, these burglaries, they call them the uptown burglaries. These uptown burglaries went on for about 3 years. And Alex, I mean, we made victims everywhere. We were bad. We were bad guys. No one was ever home during our crimes, but it doesn't matter. We didn't steal, we didn't just steal these people's property. We stole these people's sense of security. And I don't know if they ever get that back. But on July 30th, 2008, a day I will never forget, man. I'm sitting in this little old apartment, and I've got my meth dealer, a guy named Tex, sitting next to me. And we're sitting on the couch smoking meth, passing it back and forth. And I'm telling Tex, I think the end is near, man. I think the cops are going to go get me pretty soon. And you see, 10 days before this, around July 20th, July 21st, 2008, my partner in a crime, this guy named Dustin, had been picked up by the Dallas Police Department. So they're putting screws to this guy. I know it's just a matter of time before they get to me. And just as I passed the pipe back to Tex, I heard a window shatter off to our right. And tumbling across my living room floor is this little canister going end over end. And I'm watching this canister bounce across my floor, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I've seen this movie before. I know what's about to happen. And man, I leapt up off the couch and I got over this thing, and it, bam, it blew up right in my face. This bright white light, loud noise, blew me back on the couch. And when I came to, when I can see and hear again, this cop in full SWAT riot gear, man, he's got his boot on my chest and the barrel of a machine gun is digging in my eye socket. And this cop is screaming at me, don't move, don't move. And another cop screams out, we got him. We got the uptown burglar. Man, the uptown burglar. Alex, it doesn't matter how much I can put back in the stream of life today, how many people I can possibly affect and impact with my message. I can never escape that name, that moniker, the uptown burglar. That's the consequence of my decisions. About a dozen other meth addicts and myself, young and old, male and female, black and white, and everything in between, because drugs do not discriminate. But we indiscriminately and without reservation broke into the homes of dozens of people in the uptown neighborhood of Dallas to feed our insatiable meth addiction. But on July 30th, 2008, the Uptown burglaries came to an end, and they had their man, zip tied on the floor of that apartment. And I tell people all the time, Alex, that wasn't just a day I was arrested. That was a day I was rescued. God got me out of a situation I couldn't get myself out of. But that was the beginning of an incarceration process that I had no clue the extent of what I got myself into. But it was a long time before I ever saw freedom again.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that story. And, once you're in prison, and kind of to fast forward a little bit, feel free to share any details about just the rock bottom of, getting to prison. But once you're there, it was Mr. Jackson, I believe from the book, that kind of teaches you the concept or talks to you about the coffee bean. And so can you introduce that concept? Because I think it is so important for us to hear.
Oh, absolutely. And it's so important, especially right now in the time that we're in. And you'll hear from the analogy, the allegory of the coffee bean, of why it's so important right now. But, rock bottom, we talk about rock bottom and addiction. And so rock bottom is a place where you get to where you finally had enough, man, where you're sick and tired of being sick and tired. Your eyes are open and you realize that you just can't take anymore. And that's where I got, and it took me until almost a year after that arrest. That arrest wasn't rock bottom for me. But rock bottom for me came on May 18th, 2009, about 9 months later. I'm standing in front of a jury of my peers in Dallas County. And this jury, Alex, has just listened to 6 days of overwhelming evidence of my guilt. 6 days is a long criminal trial in the state of Texas for crimes that are not aggravated. No one was hurt during my crimes. But at the end of 6 days, with overwhelming evidence of my guilt, a jury went and deliberated for my punishment. It took them 10 minutes to come up with my punishment. 10 minutes, brother. I don't know how much Law and Order you watch, but if a jury's gone for 10 minutes, they smoked you. And at the end of 10 minutes, I came back in that courtroom, that judge who hadn't smiled the entire trial, he is grinning from ear to ear, and he says, Damon Joseph West, you are hereby sentenced to 65 years in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. 65 years, Alex. That is a life sentence, man. That's all your life. That's it. That's the bulk of it. So right after the trial, the sheriff's deputies took me into this little room. They had a bulletproof glass, and they told me to wait there. And then 5 minutes later, my parents walked in. And my parents, who had been there for all 6 days of trial, listened to all this testimony of what their son had been doing for these years in Dallas. And they're devastated. They're shocked. You can see it on my dad's face, especially. Man, he is just devastated by what he's heard. But my mom is she's a strong believer, man. She's a nurse. She's used to traumatic situations. So she does all the talking. And she tells me, she says, baby, debts in life demand to be paid. And she said, you just got hit with one hell of a bill from the state of Texas. She said, but Damon, you did the things they said you did at that trial. So you have to go pay that debt to society. She said, but you owe your father and I a debt too. She said, we gave you all the opportunity, love, and support to be anything you want to be in this life. And that's how you repay us. She said, that's not going to work. She says, we raised you in Port Arthur, Texas, a giant melting pot of a city, because Port Arthur is a predominantly African-American town, blue-collar town. That's where I was raised, So we gave you raised you in Port Arthur, Texas, giant melting pot of a city, gave you a great moral compass, which you chose to not use. So here's the debt you're going to pay to us. When you go to prison, you will not get in one of these white hate groups, one of these Aryan Brotherhood type gangs, because you're scared because you're the minority in there. She said, that's not going to work, Damon. You were never raised to see race, and you're not going to start today. She said, you will not get any tattoos while you're in there. And I mean, and Alex, to this day, man, I show people all the time, man, I went into prison. I got paroled on a life sentence on November 16, 2015. So I did about 7 years and 3 months in maximum security prison. And I'm on parole the rest of my life, right? But I tell people all the time, man, for the entire time I'm in there, man, almost every day, these guys are hitting you up. Hey, Wes, let me put a tattoo on you. I tell guys all the time, dude, I can't do it, man. My mom said no, man. And everybody respects a mom in prison. So that's what my mom said. She said, no gangs, no tattoos. She said, you come back as the man we raised, Damon, or don't come back at all. And that's tough love coming from my mom. So she said, do you understand this debt you're going to pay? And I was like, yeah, Mom, I got it. But I had no clue, Alex. I didn't know what I promised my mom. And I got back to the pod in county jail. And I find out I got about 2 months before the prison bus comes to get me. And every guy I'm talking to that had been in prison before, that's in county jail, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, they're telling me the same thing. Dude, you got to get into a gang. There's no way you're going to survive. You got to get into a gang. But there was this one guy, man, this older African-American man named Mr. Jackson. And Mr. Jackson had been to prison 4 or 5 times. He's what you would call a career convict, man. He had been to prison 4 or 5 times. And so, but he was a real positive guy. He was smiling all the time, lighting up a room everywhere he went, real positive guy. So one morning he comes up to me and he says, you know, West, I've been watching how you're dealing with these knuckleheads and these dummies talking about you got to get into a game. He said, man, do not listen to these fools. He said, do not get into that game. Don't break that promise you made to your parents, to God, to yourself. He said, but let me tell you what prison is going to be like. He said, you need to understand that prison is like a pot of boiling water. He said, anything we put in that pot of boiling water is going to be changed by the heat and the pressure inside that pot. He said, I want to put 3 things in that pot of boiling water. Watch how they change. A carrot, an egg, and a coffee bean. So he walks me through the progression, Alex. He said, if I put a carrot into that pot of boiling water that we call prison, he said, what happens to the carrot? I said, well, the carrot turns soft. He said, that's right. He said, the carrot goes into the water, to prison, hard. But the water, prison, changes that carrot, turns him soft. He said the carrot got beat, he got robbed, he got raped. Man, he may have gotten killed. He said, you don't want to be the carrot in prison. He said, what about the egg? And I said, well, the egg turns hard, like a hard-boiled egg. He said, that's right. He said, the egg has that shell that protects him. So physically, he said the egg is going to be fine. But inside, he's not going to be fine because that soft liquid core, his heart becomes hardened. He said, if your heart becomes hardened, you're incapable of giving or receiving love. He said, if you're incapable of giving or receiving love, you have become institutionalized and you will not come back as someone your parents recognize because your eggshell has swastikas tattooed all over it. He said, what about that coffee bean? And Alex, I had no clue, man. I don't know what happens to a coffee bean in a pot of boiling water. So he laughed at me. You know, he said, you know, for a college boy, you ain't too smart, West, because all that education I got is going to do nothing going to prison, right? He said, West, if I put a coffee bean in that pot of boiling water we call prison, he said, now you got to change the name of the water to coffee. He said, that coffee bean, the smallest of these 3 things, he said, small like you, West, had the power to change the entire atmosphere inside that pot. He said, everybody in life puts out energy, negative or positive. He said, whatever kind of energy you put out, you attract back. It's called the law of attraction, and it works. He said, so Wes, if you want to walk around that prison all the time with a mean mug on your face and a scowl, you want to look hard, he said, what you'll actually do is attract the negative inmates, the dangerous inmates. He said, it can be a very dangerous, even deadly endeavor in there. He said, but West, if you walk around that prison with a smile on your face and you let those guys know, man, they're not getting you. No matter what they do, they're not getting you. He said, man, you'll change that prison from the inside out. And he said, the best part about it is the other coffee beans in prison, the other positive inmates, they will find you because of your energy. And the last thing Mr. Jackson told me before I got on that prison bus in August of 2009 to go to prison, he said, West, go out there and go be that coffee bean. And man, that was it. I was off. You know, I was off to face my biggest fears. And Alex, you know, I got to tell you, man, fears, I learned a lot about fears in life and being that coffee bean. That coffee bean message is so important right now because we're in a giant pot of boiling water. The entire world, probably the first time in anybody's memory. I mean, you have to go back to a time like the Great Depression. There's not a lot of people alive from that era right now, from the Great Depression, to find another time in human history that we're all in this pot of boiling water together, the entire world. And so we've got to find ways to turn this into an opportunity for positivity, because in every bad situation, there's always an opportunity to present itself somewhere, but you have to go looking for that sometimes, you know?
No, that's amazing. And I think you spoke to it. I mean, right now we're going through a time where people are out of their routine. It's different than normal. One of the things that I love about reading your book is you talk about how a lot of guys in prison would sleep in and just kind of roll out of bed. But you said, not me. I'm going to get up early and I'm going to work on myself. And you said you read hundreds of books in prison. Can you speak to that discipline of just like getting up in the morning? Because I think a lot of us, even right now, we're out of our routines. And we're like, okay, what do I do? I'm working from home today. Can you speak to that and how those disciplines now carry you to where you're at today?
Absolutely. So this is the thing I've been on doing these Zoom calls, you know, all over the place, trying to pump out positivity out there. But I'm also giving my workout regimen, my daily regimen to people, because here's the deal. What's going on right now? People are at home. They're not at work. They're not teaching in school. They're not in school, whatever. What you've got to do, and I said this at the beginning, you've got to do your time, not let your time do you. It's the first rule about being on a lockdown, doing time, anything. Do your time, don't let your time do you. You fill your day up with things that you want your day to be filled up with, because if you do not, your day will fill itself with whatever it wants to fill itself up with. And usually it's stuff that you don't want, man. You don't want this negativity, all these other things creeping in, because you're giving up control over something like that. There's only a few things you control. You control what you think, what you say, what you feel, and what you do. So let's go with what you think. So I had to get up every day in prison and change the way I believe. The first part of the day, man, I'm getting up and I'm talking to God. What I would encourage people today to do is whatever time you were getting up before all this crazy stuff started happening, you get up at that same time. You're not on vacation. You know, I got up this morning. It's a Saturday morning. I thought, you know what? I get up every day. I fix my hair, get ready. But on the weekends, on Saturday, I sleep in a little bit later. I throw a visor on. I do some work in the yard. So this is what I'm wearing today. I'm wearing my visor. I'm trying to live my life the same as before it happened because I have these habits, these routines I'm in. And if you don't do a routine, if you don't find a routine and stick with it consistently and have continuity one day after another, you're going to feel lost. I mean, there's no other way around it. So get a routine. First of all, wake up at the same time you did every morning. You know, when I was in prison, I'd get up, I'd bounce up at like 4:15 in the morning every morning. First thing I would do is I would say, you know what, God, thank you for today. Thank you for this opportunity. I had to change my mindset, man. I convinced myself that prison was no longer a punishment, but an opportunity to work on myself 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you know, become the best human being I could be. And think about that, Alex. Think about waking up, your feet hitting the cold concrete floor of a prison cell. You just slept on a bunk that doesn't have a mattress. It's a metal bunk. You know, you wake up, it stinks, it's hot, you know, and you think, you're like, man, this is an opportunity. This is great. You literally have changed the way you think and believe and feel because that's what you have to do. So every day that you're down right now on this stuff, tell yourself, thank you for this opportunity. Let's start off with prayer and meditation. And I tell people all the time, prayer is when you talk to God. Meditation is when you listen. And I don't know what religion you are out there that's listening to this thing right now. Honestly, I don't care. I'm not here to push anybody's religious agenda. You can be whatever you want to be or believe in nothing at all. That's up to you. That's your call. It's your life. But if you believe in something, tap into it every morning. And I start off with my prayer. I say the same two-part prayer that I started saying in 2011 when I got into recovery in prison. And I'll give it to you. And I ask God for two things every day, and that's it, man. I try to stay out of God's way, asking him for two things. God, put in front of me what you need me to do today for you, and let me recognize it when I see it, because I don't want to miss that, God. And then I'm off. I'm off to do God's will. But before that, I have to listen. I have to meditate after that and wait to hear what it is God wants me to do. And then I go looking for things that God wants me to do. So after that, you know, I'm getting up and I'm getting dressed. You know, every day I've been on this, we can call it a lockdown because this is kind of a lockdown. It's not as bad as it could be as if we're really locked down, but it's a lockdown, man. And prison can come in many different forms. So on this lockdown, I've gotten up every day at the same time and I get dressed like I'm going to work. I fix my hair, I shave, I brush my teeth, I'm showered, I'm cleaned up, and I go into the other room, you know, where my computer is, where I work from. And in there, I eat some breakfast. I make my wife tea every morning. So, I mean, she likes tea. And so that's part of my routine anyway. So every morning I get up and make my wife a cup of tea. I take the little dog out that I'm potty training. So I have my routines. But one thing I want to do is I want to have my cup of coffee, have my breakfast. Breakfast is an important meal. Take care of yourself and eat healthy. Then I have a gratitude journal. I write down 3 things I'm grateful for. 3 things every day. And some of these things, they're going to seem repetitive. Right? Man, that was the same thing as yesterday. That's okay. Because when you're grateful, when you have gratitude, it's impossible to be things like angry, sad, mad, you know, jealous, envious. It's impossible to have those things in you when you have so much gratitude. Then I read, Alex. I spend some time in my mornings reading. When I was in prison, I read a book every other day. And history, fiction, nonfiction, biographies, philosophy, history of world religions. I read everything I could. I was a voracious reader. But I realized that when I got out of prison and I had more, you know, less time on my hands, I did a lot less reading. It's one of the first things to go was my reading habit. So now in this lockdown, I've been reading a lot more again. Once I get done with some morning reading, I get done with my gratitude journal, I get to work. And now, what is my job? I'm at home. My job is to be a servant leader, man. My job is to go out there and serve others. And servant leadership, man, comes in so many forms. Servant leadership is when we're helping other people achieve their goals in life, right? When we're helping to raise other people up to a different station in life. Because when we're helping other people, that's when we're really helping. That's when we're at our best, man. We're helping ourselves out by helping other people because we get to rise to the occasion, right? So, man, I get out there and I do these podcasts, and I tell people all the time, coaches, teachers, you know, students, whoever it is, go out there and find ways to help other people out. And this comes in many forms. If you're a coach, stay in touch with your players. You know, if you're the head coach, tell your position coaches, I want you to be in contact with your players in your position every day, either by phone or by FaceTime, not just text. I want to actually hear them. I want to actually see them if possible on FaceTime. We have a unique opportunity right now in the history of the world that, this thing is going on with the coronavirus, but it's the first time in the history of the world anything's ever happened like this. And the world's been so connected. We got social media. We've got FaceTime. Right. Take advantage of that. Stay in touch with your players. If you're a teacher, stay in touch with your students. Reach out to them. Post stuff on social media that's positive. Post little videos of you doing good things and you going out and staying positive. Show that stuff out there. Use social media to crank out positive. Make it be just a positive machine that you're cranking out. Hey, listen, when you're doing your videos, I do videos all the time and crank them out there. Don't worry about the views. I just got 11 views or 15 views. Who cares? All it takes is that one view, man. That one person that looks at your video and it gets inspired and it helps them through their day. I learned this a lot from a lesson from Mr. Rogers. Alex, you're younger than I am. Do you remember Mr. Rogers?
I just watched both of those documentaries, which were awesome. So I didn't grow up with. Yeah, you got to check them out. I think there's 2 different documentaries I've watched. I can't remember what they're both called, but there's two like Netflix and maybe Amazon have them. So you'll love them then. You'll definitely love them.
Man. Yeah, I got to watch them. Well, then you'll know this story, man. So Mr. Rogers, before he was Mr. Rogers, was a Presbyterian minister, right? And so it's in the 60s, man. And so it's, he's going to a church service on Sunday. They have a substitute preacher come in. And the substitute preacher gives a sermon that day, and Mr. Rogers sits through that sermon. And when the sermon's over, Mr. Rogers thinks to himself, that was the worst sermon I've ever heard. It was awful. He said it was terrible. When he gets every rule that he knew of in seminary of giving a sermon. He said, just as he was about to turn to the woman next to him and tell her how terrible he thought the sermon was, he bit his tongue. He bit his tongue because the woman next to him was in tears, and she turned to him and said, that's the most beautiful sermon I've ever heard. That was exactly what I needed to hear at exactly the right time. I'll never forget this sermon today. And Mr. Rogers learned a couple of important lessons today. One is that anybody can be a messenger of hope. Anybody has the ability to spread that message, because no one person can reach everybody, but everybody can reach one person, right? And so Mr. Rogers also learned that day that, maybe he could be a messenger too. Maybe he could, and that kind of gave him the idea for, the fact that he could have a show that reaches out to kids and spreads a positive message. But another big lesson he learned that day is this. He learned that they saw that sermon 2 different ways, because he came in judgment while she came in need. So many people today, Alex, are coming in need, and they need this positive message, because in the absence of a positive message, people generally in life, Alex, they want to be led. That's what people are followers for the most part. There's not a lot of leaders out there. And in the absence of good leadership, the absence of a positive, good leader, people will follow a bad leader. They do it all the time. You see it going on in the world right now. And they will follow a bad leader right off a cliff, man, if you lead them right off a cliff. It's like the thirsty man in the desert, Alex. When he sees a mirage, if he's thirsty enough, he'll drink the sand, and the sand will kill him. And that's what we do when we follow a bad leader. That negativity, that stuff kills us from the inside out. I tell people all the time that it's like that resentment thing, when that hate and resentment that you keep bottled up inside you. A resentment is it's like when you drink poison and you hope the other person dies, and it doesn't work like that. Stuff gets inside you and destroys you. So back to what we're doing in our day. I got off on that tangent about Mr. Rogers because I love that story, because I really think that you can use your day to reach out to other people and put positivity out there and have no concerns about, if you're the most viewed person on social media that day. Who cares? You're looking for one person out there, one person to positively impact. And there will be one person positively impact, but do positive posting. Do stuff out there to let people know that, hey, you're going on with life and you're living, man. This isn't going to hold you back. So after you're done with your service work, maybe another thing for service work you can do is find 3, maybe 4 or 5 people that you call every day, man. Friends, family, these relationships you have along the way, and ask them how they're doing. Ask them how their day is. And don't volunteer how you're feeling unless they ask you. Just be an ear to listen. Sometimes being an ear is service work too, because people want to be heard. They want to feel like they've been heard, that someone's listening to their grievances and their problems too. So let some people vent to you, let them be that springboard for that and absorb that. So after that, I want you to get out and I want you to go and work on yourself physically, because we got to work out every day in 3 ways. In prison, I learned this. spiritually, mentally, and physically. And so we've done the spiritual part, we've done the mental part, but now we have to physically work out. This could mean that you start off walking around your neighborhood, around your house, wherever, man. Just start off walking. If you haven't worked out in 20 years, start off with some walks, 5-minute walks, and start feeding yourself the right foods. Now you got a chance that you don't have to worry about being rushed at work and stop at a vending machine to get a candy bar or a Coke or something like that. Make your own meals. You're in a position right now. You're at home. You've got your kitchen. Use it. Feed your family the right stuff. And finally, get enough rest every day. Retire at night at a good time, because now you don't have the pressures of life and coming home from work and all the other things that go on. Man, you can go home at a good hour. But before you go to bed at night, the last part of your workout, you're going to have one more spiritual workout. You're going to do spiritual 2-a-days every day for the rest of your life. And this workout is important because now, like I said, if you believe in God, you're going to go to your God and you're going to say, hey, God, what kind of day did I have today? Was I a good person today? Do I owe someone an apology? Because you want to figure out how to get rid of making those amends every day. You don't want to bring that with you the next day. What did I do to put back into the stream of life, God? And the big question I need God for is what I kind of hinted about a while ago about resentments, is I need to know, do I owe someone forgiveness? That forgiveness thing, Alex, that's a two-way street. If you want to talk about something that can hold you back, a resentment can hold you back. The opposite of forgiveness is resentment. And if we hold on to resentment, we hold on to that hate, that poison that we've drank already, hoping the other person dies. That hate gets inside of us and it destroys us from the inside out. Hate corrodes the container it's contained in. That's a fact, And here's the thing about a person, a place, a thing, or institution that you hate. The chances are good that the person, place, institution, or thing that you hate has no clue, all right? So it doesn't even bother them because they don't know. But here's the deal. Even if they know, chances are really good, they don't care. They don't care. You're the only one that cares about that. You keep that inside you and it destroys you from the inside out. It eats you away. Let go of that stuff. Talk to God about that every night. And when you find out you owe someone forgiveness, just lay down in your bunk and say, you know what? I forgive that person and I move on. And now you're going to wake up the next day. You're going to repeat the whole process and you don't carry any of that baggage from yesterday into the day. Start fresh again, man. But do it every day. Have consistency, continuity, Alex.
Wow, that is so solid. And I mean, just like what you were hitting on, if you're so consumed and so busy with, showing others how you can love and serve and care for them, you don't have time for the negativity. You just don't have time for it because you're so consumed with those things. And that's amazing. Just your routine. That's unbelievable. Last question. And I ask everyone that comes on the show this question, and maybe you've thought about it before. Maybe you already have an answer. Maybe you don't. But here's the question. So at the end of your life, whenever that is someday, what do you want people to say about Damon West?
What do I want people to say about Damon West? A kind of a similar question was asked to me when I was in front of the parole people, right? And so I've been in prison for 7 years and 3 months. I'm up for my first parole on a life sentence. And I don't think I'm going to make parole, Alex. I don't think that's even possible, because guys like me, life sentence that's not aggravated, if you're going to do 10, 15 years before they let you go, my parents are going to be dead. I know all these things are going to happen, right? I just know that's the way it's going to work out. But when I go into the parole board and I'm a coffee bean at this point in prison, the lady asked me, she's like, we don't see a lot of people come through the system like you, Mr. West. You've had this amazing life and, you've done all these things. And then you got hooked on meth and you started breaking into houses. You met a lot of victims and the jury hit you with a life sentence. They destroyed you with a life sentence. You got way too much time, but you came to prison. You didn't let that determine your life. You changed your life in the world. You changed the whole world around you here, the whole prison around me. Everybody took notice of that. The inmates, the guards, the parole board. They're like, she's like, I got one question for you, Mr. West. If you could be remembered for being anything in this world, she said, give it to me in just one word, go. And Alex, because I was a coffee bean, and because I was a passenger in life in that car that God is driving now, and I'm not trying to take the wheel anymore, Every time I try to take the wheel, I ran the car right off of a cliff, And so because I've subscribed to this way of life, I've changed the way I think. I changed the way I believe. And like I said earlier, man, changing the way you believe is so important. I use Dabo Sweeney a lot when I talk about changing the way you believe. At Clemson, what he's done in 10 years is he's changed the way they believe about themselves. He's changed the way they think about themselves. And if you believe in yourself in a certain way, you can change the trajectory of your life. And so when, You know, when this is all done, whenever people are writing my epitaph and they're talking about what Damon West was, I just want them to say that, hey, man, that guy was useful. You know, he got it. He did some bad things in life, and he went back and he turned it around, and he became a servant leader. You know, if I could be remembered for being a servant leader, what an honor that would be. A good friend of mine, Joe Tatoris, man, he was a friend and mentor. Joe was a guy that you could find in the prison chapel every Monday night in my prison, and he would come in on these prison retreats. He's one of these men that would come into these retreats, truly living out that gospel, Matthew 25:36. When I was in prison, you visited me. And so he would come in all the time, but Joe could be anywhere he wanted to be. Joe, man, in 1976, Joe started a little sandwich shop right here in Beaumont, Texas. Had 4 employees in 1 store. Today, Jason's Deli has over 300 stores. They're in 30 different states. They've got 12,000 employees. And so, you know, Joe, the thing that everybody talked about Joe when he passed away was that he was a servant leader. Because Joe talked about servant leadership. He's the one that taught me about servant leadership. If I could be remembered for being a servant leader and for being useful, then I have fulfilled whatever it is God wants me to do in this world. Because really the secret to life, Alex, is being a servant leader. The secret to life is service and humility. And humility is being right size, is knowing your place in this world. We're about this big in the world. If God's line is infinitely long, our little line that we have is that big. And on our line every day, there are 4 things to work on, Alex. Those 4 things are the 4 things we control. And I want people to say, you know what, that guy got in there and he worked on those 4 things every day. Those 4 things are what you think, what you say, what you feel, and what you do. Everything you control, Alex, between your ears. And if I can stay focused on that and I work on those 4 things and I get up every day and I ask God, put in front of me what you need me to do today for you and let me recognize it when I see it, then I will be remembered for being a servant leader and my life will have been fulfilling and useful.
That's amazing. Well, thank you for that. I mean, that was an amazing answer to that question. Wow. So thank you for sharing your story. And I'm going to put a link to all of how everyone can reach out to you in the show notes. But man, thank you for your example. We're going to keep following you. I can't wait to hear you speak in person someday. It's going to be awesome, man. So you just keep doing your thing, keep making a difference. And thanks so much for joining us today.
Alex, man, I gotta tell you, man, thank you. You gave me purpose today, man. And if I talked about wanting to be useful, you gave me a format for it. You gave me the forum to do it. I'm looking forward to hearing you speak too. John Gordon, who is a friend and mentor, has changed my life, speaks highly of you. And if John speaks highly of you, then I'm looking forward to hearing your presentation too, man. Remember, everybody's got a message to send out, man. And I'm looking forward to meeting you one day in person. Thank you for your time today because that's the most valuable thing you have, brother.
Thanks, brother. And guys, I hope you have a great rest of your week. And remember, just keep making a difference, keep staying positive, and trusting God with your future. Have a great week, and we'll talk to y'all soon.